Stories where arrogance gets crushed by destiny? Hit subscribe and turn on notifications because stories like this expose what happens when people judge power by appearance alone. And now the story begins. The intake doors of ironclad state penitentiary slammed shut with a sound that echoed like a coffin ceiling, and every head turned when the new inmate walked in. A tall black man with calm eyes, relaxed shoulders, and wrists hanging loose as if he were checking into a hotel instead of one of the most violent prisons in America, his orange jumpsuit hanging slightly loose on a body that looked strong but not exaggerated. No tattoos screaming danger. No scars bragging about past wars, just a quiet presence that made the fluorescent lights feel harsher and the air heavier. And from the upper tier Marcus Grinder Kane watched him with a grin that had broken men before, Grinder being the undisputed bully king of Ironclad. A 6'5" enforcer with a reputation for folding new inmates in half during their first week. A man who believed fear was currency and pain was language, and he leaned over the railing whispering to his crew that the new guy would be his entertainment before dinner, because that's how Ironclad worked. New blood paid rent and bruises, while the new inmate, booked as Elias Ward, moved through processing without complaint, eyes forward, breath steady, memories locked behind a disciplined stillness that had once walked into arenas filled with screaming. Thousands, lights blazing, cameras rolling, belts gleaming, because years earlier the same man had been known worldwide by another name. A name commentators spoke with reverence and opponents spoke with dread. A name erased now by court documents and sealed records after a tragedy no one in the prison knew. A championship reign ended not by defeat but by a single night, a single choice, a single loss that had nothing to do with fists, and as Elias entered general population, whispers followed. Assumptions grew, bets were made, and Grinder descended the stairs like a predator confident the hunt was already over, bumping Elias hard enough to spill his tray, laughing as being splattered across the floor, calling him rookie and worse, waiting for the flinch, the apology, the spark of fear that always came, but Elias simply looked down at the mess, then back up, his eyes not angry, not scared, just aware, and he said nothing, which annoyed Grinder more than resistance ever could. Because silence robbed him of power, so Grinder shoved him again, harder, crowd forming, guards pretending not to see, and Grinder announced loudly that Elias belonged to him now, that he'd teach him how Ironclad worked, and still Elias didn't react because discipline had been carved into him through years of training at Dawn, through broken ribs and championship rounds, through learning that violence used carelessly was weakness, and that restraint was the sharpest weapon of all. But Grinder mistook restraint for fear, and fear made him greedy. So that night in the showers, steam thick and echoes bouncing, Grinder made his move, swinging first, a heavy haymaker meant to put Elias on the floor, but something impossible happened. The punch never landed, because Elias shifted just inches, not flashy, not fast-looking, just precise, and Grinder stumbled forward confused, and before he could reset, Elias touched him, not struck, touched, fingers pressing briefly against Grinder's neck and shoulder. A movement so subtle the watching inmates barely noticed, until Grinder's legs gave out and he collapsed gasping. His body refusing commands, panic flooding his eyes as he realized he couldn't move, couldn't breathe right, and Elias knelt beside him, whispering so only Grinder could hear that he didn't want trouble, that this was his last warning. Then he stood and walked away as Grinder slowly regained control, humiliated, terrified, and alive. Rumors exploding across Ironclad by morning that the new guy had dropped Grinder without throwing a punch, theories ranging from hidden blades to black magic. But the truth was more dangerous. That Elias Ward knew exactly how the human body failed, knowledge earned in cages and rings across the world, where he had once been the deadliest MMA champion in history, undefeated for a decade, a master of pressure, timing, and mercy, a man who had retired at the top after an accidental death in a street altercation he never intended. Moment that haunted him every night and landed him here, seeking not dominance but disappearance, but prisons don't allow disappearance, and Grinder couldn't live with what happened, so he gathered allies, sharpened shanks, planned revenge, believing numbers would solve what pride could not, while Elias spent his days lifting, reading, staying invisible, helping an old inmate with bad knees, breaking up fights with words instead of fists, earning quiet respect instead of fists, earning quiet respect, until the ambush came in the yard under open sky. Grinder charging with 3 others, steel flashing, intent murderous, and for the first time Elias accepted that restraint would no longer protect anyone, and what followed wasn't a brawl but a lesson. a terrifyingly efficient dismantling where movements flowed like water, strikes landing only where needed, joints locked and released, bodies dropped without unnecessary damage, weapons disarmed and tossed away, the crowd frozen in disbelief as 4 violent men fell in seconds, alive but broken, guards rushing in late, batons raised then lowered as they realized the fight was already over, Elias standing calm, hands open, blood barely marking him, and from that moment Ironclad changed, because dominance had found a new shape, not loud or cruel but absolute, and as weeks passed Elias was tested again and again, each time ending conflicts without brutality, earning protection deals he never asked. 4. Becoming a myth the administration couldn't control, until a twist no one expected surfaced when a young CO recognized him from an old highlight reel, eyes widening as he connected the dots. The greatest champion who ever lived now wearing state orange, and word reached the warden, who summoned Elias, offering favors, protection, early parole in exchange for control, for keeping the yard quiet, but Elias refused, saying he'd already paid too much for violence, that he'd protect himself and others but wouldn't be anyone's weapon again, and that refusal earned him an enemy more dangerous than Grinder. The system itself, transfers delayed, privileges revoked, pressure mounting until Grinder, broken in spirit, approached Elias not with hatred but fear, admitting he'd been paid to provoke him, that someone wanted to see what Elias could do to justify using him, and the realization hit Elias that Ironclad was just another cage, bigger but no different, and the final twist came when a riot erupted sparked by rival gangs, chaos exploding, guards overwhelmed, lives at risk, and Elias stepped in not as a fighter but as a leader, positioning bodies, redirecting aggression, ending the riot with minimal harm, saving guards and inmates alike, an act that forced the state to acknowledge the truth, that the deadliest man in the building was also the most disciplined, and months later, quietly, without headlines, Elias Ward was transferred to a low-security facility, his sentence reduced for heroism, his legend fading into rumor, leaving behind a prison that would never forget the day a bully attacked a quiet black new inmate, unaware he was the deadliest MMA champion in history. And for those watching this story unfold, remember this: real power doesn't announce itself, it waits. And if you want more stories where justice hits harder than fists, where arrogance meets destiny, and where legends are revealed in the darkest places, subscribe now, because the next story might be even more shocking.